legend of the craft. How this worthy science was first begun, I shall tell. Before Noah's flood, there was a man named Lamech, as it is written in the 4th chapter of Genesis, whose 4 children founded the beginning of all crafts in the world. Jubal was the elder son, and he found the craft of geometry. His brother, Jubal, found the craft of music. The 3rd brother, Tubal-Cain, found out smith's craft to work iron and steel, and their sister, Naamah, found out the art of weaving. These children knew well that God would take vengeance for sin, or destroy humanity, either by fire or by water. Wherefore they writ the science they had found in 2 pillars of stone, that they might be found after Noah's flood. And that one stone was marble, for that would not burn with fire, and that other stone was cleft lanterns, a stone that was said to float, and would not drown in no water. The legend then relates that after the flood, Hermes, the father of wise men, he found one of the 2 pillars of stone, and found the science written there, and he taught it to other men. And at the making of the Tower of Babylon there was masonry first made much of, and the king of Babylon, Nimrod, was a mason himself, and loved well the science. The legend attributes to Nimrod the creation of masons into an organized body, and he was the first who gave them a constitution or laws for their government. Masonry, according to the legendary account, was founded in Babylon, whence it passed over to the rest of the world, as Abraham and Sarah then brought the 7 sciences to the Egyptians, where Euclid became its chief exponent. As for the 4 children of Lamech, none is more central to Masonry than Tubal-Cain. Tubal-Cain, the celebrated forefather of Masonry, was also the forefather of Hiram-Abiff. As his name would imply, he was also a descendant of Cain, for Tubal-Cain means offspring of Cain. So then, according to both the Bible and the Masonic legend, the craft had its origin in the bloodline of Cain. This has always been an open secret, and for some an open wound, both painful and unsightly, so they have attempted to cover it up, going so far as to claim that Lamech was of the line of Seth. Of course, it should be obvious that if Lamech was descended from Seth, he would never have named his child offspring of Cain. Others have claimed the science originated with Adam, who taught it to his sons, and that it was passed on through Seth, not Cain. However, this is contradicted by the original Masonic legend, and by the Bible upon which this legend is based. Returning now to Hiram-Abiff, we find that there is much dispute as to the origin of the 3rd degree, and the Hiramic legend taught therein. As we shall see, the evidence suggests that these were introduced to the craft by the influence of the Rosicrucians through the instrumentality of Francis Bacon and King James. The Rosicrucian temple legend is quite similar to the Masonic version, but with greater detail, and with many important keys not contained in the Hiramic legend, but which are, nonetheless, of the greatest significance to Masonry. Once again, we quote from William Harvey. If the inventors of the 3rd degree got the suggestion from the Rosicrucians to make Hiram the central figure in their new scheme, it is very obvious that they found their details as to his murder in The Legend of the Temple, and turned that story to suit the purpose they had in view. The legend is given at length in Charles William Heckethorn's singularly attractive work, The Secret Societies of All Ages and Countries. In 2004, when Brother Paul Kinney gave a presentation on this legend, he began with the following words. This evening, I would like to present to you a version of the temple legend that few brethren will have heard before. While similar in many respects, it presents challenging differences that, whether correct or not, are nonetheless insightful. He concludes his lecture with the words, the basis of the whole of Freemasonry is to be found in the temple legend concerning Hiram-Abiff or Adoniram. Everything to do with the secret of Freemasonry and its tendency is expressed in this temple legend. With this introduction in mind, let us now turn our attention thence. At one point in the legend, as Hiram is attempting to cast his masterwork, the so-called Molten Sea, he finds he has been sabotaged by 3 jealous apprentices. A disaster occurs, and the unchecked metal flows like lava over the temple floor. As Hiram tries in vain to check the flow with water, a mysterious figure appears above him, saying, "Come, my son, be without fear. I have rendered thee incombustible. Cast thyself into the flames." The credulous Hiram jumps in. Then asks the voice, "Whither do you take me?" The voice answers, "Into the center of the earth, into the soul of the world, into the kingdom of the great Cain, where liberty reigns with him. There the tyrannous envy of Adonai ceases. There can we, despising his anger, taste the fruit of the tree of knowledge. There is the home of my fathers. Who then am I, and who art thou?" "I am the father of thy fathers. I am the son of Lamech. I am Tubal-Cain." Tubal-Cain introduced Hiram into the sanctuary of fire, where he expounded to him the weakness of Adonai and the base passions of that god, the enemy of his own creature. Hiram was then led into the presence of the author of his race, Cain. Cain related to Hiram his experiences, sufferings, and misfortunes brought upon him by the implacable Adonai. Tubal-Cain then bestowed his hammer to Hiram, saying, "Thanks to this hammer and the help of the genie of fire, thou shalt speedily accomplish the work left unfinished through man's stupidity and malignity." With the help of his newfound ability, Hiram successfully completes his masterpiece, only to be promptly murdered by the same unworthy apprentices. So then, is Cain to be understood as the progenitor of Masonry? Not quite. That prize can be awarded to his father, who, according to the legend, is not Adam. We shall now quote from the beginning of the temple legend as given by Steiner. The ancestry of the builders of the mystical temple was as follows. One of the Elohim, or primitive genii, married Eve and had a son called Cain, whilst Jehovah, or Adonai, another of the Elohim, created Adam and united him with Eve to bring forth the family of Abel, to whom were subjected the sons of Cain as punishment for the transgression of Eve. Thus we see that Cain is a direct descendant of the gods, but Abel is a descendant of Adam and Eve, who are human. Cain committed fratricide. He killed Abel, and for this he was excluded from communion with Yahweh. He went away into distant lands and founded his own race there. Adam again united with Eve, and from this union came Seth, also mentioned in the Bible, who took over the role of Abel. Thus we have two generations of mankind, the race of Cain, who was a descendant of Eve and one of the Elohim, and the other race, which had human parentage and was brought into existence at the command of Yahweh. Among the descendants of Cain are all those who have been creators of art and science, as, for instance, Methuselah, the inventor of the Tau script, and Tubal-Cain, who taught the use and working of metal ores and iron. In this line of descent, stemming from the Elohim, were all those who trained themselves in the arts and sciences. Methuselah, another of his descendants, invented the sacred characters, the books of the Tau, and the symbolic T by which the workers descended from the genie of fire recognized each other. Tubal-Cain dug subterranean passages in the mountains to save his race during the deluge, but it perished nevertheless, and only Tubal-Cain and his son came out alive. The wife of Ham, second son of Noah, thought the son of Tubal-Cain handsomer than the sons of men, and he became progenitor of Nimrod, who taught his brethren the art of hunting and founded Babylon. Hiram also descended from the race of Cain, and he was the inheritor of all that had been learned by the others of his line in technology and art. He was the most significant architect we can imagine. Well now, this is all quite interesting, but we still don't know who sired Cain. The legend merely says, one of the Elohim, and that it was not Jehovah. One of the fullest accounts of the legend is to be found in the writings of Max Heindel, in a work entitled FREE-MASONRY and Catholicism, which, despite its simple title, is an important occult document, of which we shall hear but a small fraction. I recommend that interested persons read the article in full, for the doctrine is disfigured by abbreviation. Heindel was a famous Rosicrucian, His writings, including this one, are often featured on Masonic websites. In Freemasonry and Catholicism, we find a disclaimer which, to the best of my knowledge, does not appear in any of his other works. The writer is not a Mason, and thus he is free to say what he knows without fear of violating obligations. But he is a Mason at heart, and therefore frankly opposed to Catholicism. Before expounding on the Masonic legend, Heindel first details the Rosicrucian creation story, which I have condensed as follows. In the early stages, all was dark and hot. Jehovah, in order to begin the creation of physical life, cooled the newly formed earth with water. Some of the angels adapted well to this change, but other angels, led by Lucifer, could not bear to be quenched with water, so they rebelled against Jehovah. Lucifer led this rebellion, and he, together with his adherents, left the earth to go to Mars. Jehovah's representative angel on earth was Gabriel, while the ambassador of the forces of Lucifer was Samael. According to Heindel, Gabriel's angels are the givers of physical life, while Samael and the hosts of Mars are the angels of death. Despite this, however, Lucifer is cast as the dark hero in the story. For clarity's sake, Heindel explains that the term Catholicism, as here used, does not refer to the Roman Catholic Church alone, Catholic being taken in the sense of universal, so that the term includes all movements inaugurated by the sons of Seth, the priestcraft. Similarly, the term craft is used within this documentary in a broader sense, to be understood as the Cainite movements in general, the brothers of the craft. I now quote directly from Heindel. The Masonic legend has points of variance from, as well as agreement with, the Bible story. It states that Jehovah created Eve, that the Lucifer spirit Samael united with her, but that he was ousted by Jehovah and forced to leave her before the birth of her son, Cain. As he left Eve before the birth of the child, Cain was the son of a widow and a serpent of wisdom. Then Jehovah created Adam, a human being like Eve. Adam and Eve united and begat a child, human like themselves, whose name was Abel. Jehovah, being the lunar god, is associated with water. Hence there was enmity between Cain, the son of fire, and Abel, the son of water. So Cain slew Abel, and Abel was replaced by Seth. In time and through generations, the sons of Cain became the craftsmen of the world, skilled in the use of fire and metal. Their ideal was male, Hiram Abiff, the master workman. The sons of Seth, on the other hand, became the churchmen, upholding the feminine ideal, the Virgin Mary, and ruling the people by the magic water placed at their temple doors. By arduous and energetic application to the world's work, the sons of Cain have acquired worldly wisdom and temporal power. They have been captains of industry and masters of statecraft, while the sons of Seth, looking to the Lord for guidance, have become the avenue for divine and spiritual wisdom. They constitute the priestcraft. Thus, from the beginning, there have been two kinds of people in the world. One, begotten by the Lucifer spirit Samael, is aggressive, and possessed of great initiative, but impatient of restraint or authority, whether human or divine. This class is loath to take things on faith, and prone to prove all things by the light of reason. They have lost their spiritual sight, and are imprisoned in the forehead of the body, where it is said Cain was marked. They must wander as prodigal sons, until they find the door of the temple, and ask and receive light. Then, as Freemason, or children of light, they are instructed in methods of building a new temple, an ethereal soul body, or house eternal in the heavens, not made with hands and without sound of hammer. When its nakedness is clothed with that house, see Corinthians 4:5, then the neophyte receives the Word, the open sesame to the inner worlds, and learns to travel in foreign parts in the invisible worlds. There he takes soul flights into the heavenly regions and qualifies for higher degrees, under the more direct instruction from the grand architect of the universe, who fashioned both heaven and earth. Such is the temperament of the widow's sons, inherited from their divine progenitor Samael, and given by him to their ancestor, Cain. While Cain, governed by divine ambition, toiled and tilled the soil to make 2 blades of grass grow where there was only one, Abel, the human progeny of human parents, felt no urge or unrest, himself a creature of Jehovah through Adam and Eve. He was perfectly contented to tend the flocks also created by God, and to accept a livelihood from their divinely begotten increase without labor or exercising initiative. Cain then slew Abel, but did not thereby exterminate the docile creatures of Jehovah, for we are told, Adam knew Eve again, and she bore Seth. Seth had the same characteristics as Abel, and transmitted them to his descendants, who to this day continue to trust to the Lord for everything, and who live by faith and not by work. The animosity of Cain and Abel has been perpetuated from generation to generation among their respective descendants. Nor could it be otherwise, because one class, as temporal rulers, aim to lift humanity to physical well-being through conquest of the material world, while the priesthood, in their role as spiritual guides, urge their followers to forsake the wicked world, the vale of tears, and look to God for comfort. Freemasonry today is an attempt by the hierarchs of fire, the Lucifer spirits, to bring us the imprisoned spirit, light, that by it we may see and know. Catholicism is an activity of the hierarchs of water, and places holy water at the temple door to quench the spirits seeking light and knowledge, and to inculcate faith in Jehovah. Various attempts have been made to unite the 2 streams of humanity and emancipate them from their progenitors, Jehovah and the Lucifer spirits. With this end in view, the symbolical temple was built according to the instruction of Solomon, the son of Seth, and the molten sea was cast by Hiram-Abiff, the son of Cain. But the main object was frustrated, as we have seen, and the attempt at unification proved abortive. In short, the sons of Cain are the originators of the arts and crafts. Therefore, when Jehovah chose Solomon, the scion of the race of Seth, to build a house for his name, Solomon was unable to execute the divine design in concrete form. Therefore, it became necessary for him to apply to King Hiram of Tyre, the descendant of Cain, who selected Hiram-Abiff, the son of a widow, as all Freemasons are called because of the relation of their divine progenitor with Eve. Hiram-Abiff then became Grand Master of the Army of Construction. In him, the arts and crafts of all the sons of Cain who had gone before had flowered. He was skilled beyond all others in the work of the world, without which the plan of Jehovah must have remained forever a divine dream, and could never have become a concrete reality. The worldly acumen of the sons of Cain was as necessary to the completion of this temple as the spiritual conception of the sons of Seth, and, therefore, during the period of construction, the 2 classes joined forces, the underlying enmity being hidden under a superficial show of amity. It was, indeed, the first attempt to unite them, and had that been accomplished, the world history from then on would have been altered in a very material manner. In Max Heindel's vision, these 2 bloodlines will eventually work together in harmony, both ultimately achieving salvation through their respective paths. Other writers were not so utopian, however. As we now return to the standard temple legend as given by Heckathorn and Steiner, Hiram stands in the presence of Cain, there to receive a prophecy. He heard the voice of him who was the offspring of Tubal-Cain and his sister Naamah. A son shall be born unto thee, whom thou shalt indeed not see, but whose numerous descendants shall perpetuate thy race, which, superior to that of Adam, shall acquire the empire of the world. For many centuries they shall consecrate their courage and genius to the service of the ever ungrateful race of Adam. But at last the best shall become the strongest, and restore on the earth the worship of fire. Thy sons, invincible in thy name, shall destroy the power of kings, the ministers of the Adonai's tyranny. Go, my son, the genii of fire are with thee. The revolution took hold with Martin Luther, whose crest bore a modified rose and cross. Protestantism began, and with it, a serious blow to the spiritual dominance of the sons of Seth. As Brother Cosgrove said, Washington was a revolutionary of the brotherhoods that saw the royalties of Holland, France, Germany, Sweden, Italy, and other European countries fall by the sword of the Third Estates. Beginning with the Masonic reformations of the 16th century, the royalty of Europe bore witness to the hammer of the sons of Cain, who truly did destroy the power of kings, the ministers of Adonai's, the priesthood's, tyranny. The Russian Revolution was one of the darker chapters in the ongoing struggle. Russia would not merely feel, but even see the hammer, for alongside other symbols more common to the movement, such as the rising sun, its new coat of arms boldly bore the hammer, with which the land was pounded into shape, and the sickle, as harvest time had arrived for that nation. Now, as we read earlier, King Nimrod the Mason began the Tower of Babel, which was also the first major Masonic endeavor. As with Cain, Jehovah did not look with favor upon the tower, and subsequently destroyed it. In a symbolic display of the prophecy expressed in the temple legend, the European Union released a poster with unmistakable imagery showing Masons, or square men, rebuilding the Tower of Babel, symbolizing the EU. To drive this point home, the Parliament building of the EU has also been constructed in a clear imitation of the Tower of Babel. Aside from the implications of centralized government and the re-establishment of Babylon, this symbolizes united rebellion against the will of Jehovah. Before we examine a few other symbols in light of all this information, it is worthwhile to trace the origins of this belief system, as far back as may safely be done, where we arrive at certain sects of the Gnostics. Returning to Hecathorn, we read the following. From the Valentinians sprang the Ophites, calling themselves so after the serpent that by tempting Eve brought into the world the blessings of knowledge, and the Cainites, who maintained that Cain had been the first Gnostic, in opposition to the blind, unreasoning faith of Abel, and therefore persecuted by the demiurgus Jehovah. On this idea is founded the Masonic legend of the temple. These Gnostic beliefs eventually found their way into Freemasonry. To quote René Guénon, modern Masonry resulted from a partial fusion of the Brotherhood of the Rose Cross, which had preserved Gnostic doctrine since the Middle Ages, with the ancient building guilds of the Masons, whose tools had moreover already been used as symbols of the Hermetic philosophers. Steve Cosgrove, in his wonderful four-part series, traced the history of the temple legend, uncovering the important fact that handwritten copies were found in the library of Lord Valkyries. This establishes the legend's antiquity, making it by far the most likely source for the Hiramic legend of the third degree. Quoting Brother Cosgrove, the Knights Templar revived the idea in the 12th and 13th centuries of building King Solomon's temple, but they were destroyed by the French king, Philip the Fair. Their legacy was preserved on one level by Scottish Freemasonry, and on a higher level by their successors, the Rosicrucians. Scottish Masonry was imported into England when King James VI of Scotland became James I of England in 1603. James can truly be called the Freemason King. After he moved to London and became King of England, he engaged a royal court of Masons. Francis Bacon, the single greatest scientific mind of the time, was his close friend, fellow Mason, and mentor. In the old Scottish ritual system, there was a 1-degree ritual, and then after the Second Shaw Statutes, a 2-grade degree system that was carried over to England during the reign of King James I. At some time in the early 17th century in the King's Court, the original Scottish 2-degree system was modified into a 3-degree system. The 3rd degree describing the temple legend of King Solomon, and the building of the temple by Hiram was not always the motif. Most likely, the old charges in both Scotland and England had a 1 or 2 degree system, It had in place a sort of Noah legend, with the pillars of Cain and Boaz serving as the preservers of the ancient Atlantean wisdom. In the Graham manuscript from 1726, the manuscript includes an early version of the Hiram legend, in which Noah has the part that after 1730 is ascribed to Hiram. The Rosicrucian contribution to pre-existing initiatic Freemasonry was the supplanting of the temple legend for the old Noah legend based upon the Pillars of Enoch. This temple legend was spread by the Rosicrucian fraternity, first to Germany and Bohemia, then to England, and finally to Scotland, as evidenced by the handwritten translations found in the library of Lord Valkyries. King James VI was an initiated Scottish Mason,